Hi everyone. If you're watching this video, that probably means that you watched parts 1 and 2. Okay? If you didn't, go back, go find them, go watch them. It'll make your life a lot simpler. Because in the first video, we actually looked at the interpretation tool, the rationale behind it, as well as the different historical thinking strategies, some of the skills, actually historical thinking skills, and types of questions your teachers would ask at the end. In the last video, we modeled, it took a while. I did a lot of thinking out loud, and I proved that you, as a student, can act like a historian, and we did that using Jefferson's vision of American democracy. This video, we're going to specifically focus on suggestions and scaffolds utilizing the interpretation tool for sources surrounding the Louisiana Purchase. Now, what's a little complex about this situation is that this is taken, remember contextualization, meaning I have to give you the background. So this unit is part of a bigger picture, how the United States expanded, and that eventually was going to lead to sectionalism, which meaning people care about the part of the country more and cause the Civil War. But that larger question comes up later. Right now, what you're going to look at with me is what the lovely social studies teacher would expect you to do with two different sources. So your choices are Jefferson's Conundrum or Puzzle of Louisiana Purchase, or it says link here, but I already have it open. We're not going to click on a link. Or a Federalist Congressman opposes Louisiana Purchase. Jefferson's Conundrum of Louisiana Purchase. Notice that we only have some of the choices here, and they want you to say how you used those strategies along the way. No questions on this. I guess they wanted to simplify it, although they're going to ask you in step 4 for something else, so it's kind of like the questions. Or a Federalist Congressman opposes the Louisiana Purchase. Okay, so let's take a step back and think about this before we go further. If you remember, Thomas Jefferson, Mr. Strict Interpretation, Mr. Do not stretch the Constitution, do not make a national bank, now has to buy Louisiana, except it does not say anywhere in the Constitution that he can buy it. Well, it doesn't say that they can't. It doesn't say they can. So Jefferson has to talk about this puzzle in his mind, and we're going to look at that a little bit, how you should look at it. Or a Federalist Congressman opposes Louisiana. We're not going to dive into that as much. It's a speech against the purchase of Louisiana. Now, what your teacher is probably going to ask you to do, and this is one way to use the interpretation tool, that's why I'm showing it to you, is on the Louisiana Purchase documents. They're going to ask you to look at both Jefferson's Conundrum and the Federalist Congressman. Going back here, they want you to pair up. You do one source, your friend does another source, and then you speak to each other, which would probably work out a lot better in person, right? Hey, maybe you'll watch this and you will be doing this in person. That would be awesome, right? But what I'm going to do for the purpose of our video is I'm going to think about this in respect to one source, Jefferson's Conundrum, or trying to figure out how, unpuzzling how we could purchase Louisiana, who wrote or spoke the document, what is the point of view, purpose, potential bias for the document, statements about it. It's the same thing we did last video, okay, those layers of the interpretation tool, but here's what's new. Okay, one piece of evidence showing that the arguments are economic, social, political, or cultural. So let's take a jump back there because that's a new layer. It's kind of like in place of the questions on the bottom of the tool. They want you to talk to your partner to review evidence for economic. Economic, just a reminder, I know you know this, but let's just remind ourselves. Economic is trade, industry, and the creation of wealth. Or social, which is society and its organization, how things are broken down. Political, meaning government, the way people run things. And then cultural, meaning the way people have different ideas, customs, behavior. There's another video on that you may want to watch. So there's two ways you can approach this. I told you we're going to look at Jefferson's Conundrum over the Louisiana Purchase, right? We can either go to the strategies first, or we can go to the economic, social, and political plus cultural, ESP plus C. Yes, there is a whole video on ESP plus C, specifically aimed at 9th graders, but anyone in high school can look at it for understanding if you need to review it. Personally, I would go with the strategies first, because if I know the strategies, then I could know what I'm looking for. ESP plus C is kind of like in lieu or in place of the question. And by the way, if you ever have a source that looks like this, that says share, request, edit access, File, make a copy, put it into your own Google Drives. This way you can edit if your teacher forgets to do that and just leaves it on view mode. Okay, back here. Now, Jefferson's Conundrum or Puzzle of Louisiana Purchase. Who wrote or spoke the document? Well, I know it's Thomas Jefferson, right? Jefferson, while deciding if he should make the Louisiana Purchase. Now, notice I did that without reading anything other than the title. Source of document, what is the point of view, purpose for creating potential bias? What statements about the past does the author make they support with evidence? Okay, what can I steal from, let me teach you something that I teach my students all the time. I read the blurb. That's this paragraph up here. That's the blurb. And then I usually look if there's a date. It says August 9th, 1803. So I give myself a date. Down the bottom, they always have the citation. Okay. So now let's go back here. Okay. What is the point of view, purpose for creating and potential bias of this document? Let's see. Purchase of Louisiana Territory presented a self-created constitutional issue for President Thomas Jefferson. During the early debates over constitutionality of the National Bank, Jefferson and his Republican colleagues argued that the bank was unconstitutional because the Constitution did not expressly or explicitly or exactly, I'm making a big deal that it didn't exactly say it straight out, delegate or give the power to make the bank the national government. They rejected the Federalist argument that the power to create the bank was implied or understood by the Elastic Clause. Now Jefferson and his Republican colleagues were celebrating the purchase of nearly 1,000,000 square miles of land that would double the size of the United States and promote their vision of an agrarian or farming United States of America. However, the purchase of land is also not expressly granted to the national government by the Constitution. The expert has taken a letter President Jefferson wrote to John Dickinson describing the political issues related to the purchase of Louisiana. So the point of view is going to be Jefferson's issues with purchasing. I don't have to read the source yet. I just got that from the blurb. Louisiana Territory. He was worried if purchase was constitutional, as it was not a specific or expressed, delegated, not expressed, straight out power. So that is going to be based on the blurb, the purpose for the source, the point of view. I also usually send my students to the first paragraph right away. So let's see if we do that, if that helps us. The acquisition of New Orleans would of itself have been a great thing, as it would have ensured our Western brethren the means of exporting their produce. So that first sentence, okay, they can, and then it goes on if that they could control Mississippi, and again they'll have less war with foreign powers, less bickering or fighting with foreign powers. So okay, and Jefferson also, let's add this in over here. Jefferson wants to purchase Louisiana for increased farmland, which was in the blurb, by the way, that paragraph on top. Fighting with other countries, especially out west, with claims of territory, and control of the Mississippi River, which is a big one. Because if you control the Mississippi River, if you control the Mississippi, you can control New Orleans, which was part of his purchase. Bias, well, we know that he's an anti-federalist, aka a Republican. There's no more anti-federalists. As a Republican, Jefferson wants more territory and less fights with France. Okay, now in the next paragraph, which you can stop and actually read through, Jefferson says he thinks he needs an amendment to the Constitution. See that? but because it's not, it's not specific to the Constitution. So his bias is like he might not be, like he's still sticking to what he's saying. He's like, no, I'm right. What is his point of view? He needs an amendment, but we need it. I'm going to jump down to the end, having read the whole source already. We need to buy this while we still can, and we can before basically France sells it to anyone else. Okay, biased that this needs to happen even though they don't have enough time for an amendment, which according to Thomas Jefferson has to happen, but he doesn't have time for it. So he's basically going to have to be a hypocrite and eat his words and act like the Federalists. Okay, identifying the author's claim. What statement about the past does the author make that they support with evidence? Okay, can't afford to have wars with other countries over Western territories. Need new lands. Can't afford to have wars with other countries, Western territories. Need new land. They have to buy it from France. I'm not writing the whole thing out. And then last step, you would annotate for economic, social, political, and cultural reasons. Modeled how you would think through it, except for the fourth question. Yes, I noticed that they have Mississippi spelled. Remember, it's an older spelling. But remember, some of these questions overlap. Kind of like I got a lot in question 2 that kind of belongs in question 3. Your teacher, though, is going to ask you after you record the strategies why you used the strategy, why you did what you did. So for this one, your answer is, well, you gave me the question. But if they didn't give you the question, you would have to explain why you used that strategy for this source. There's a lot going on with these historical thinking strategies. Teachers only going to ask you to use some of them because you're acting like historians, kind of like these people want you to think. And I'm sure if you went to work on the Federalist saying, hey, how could you purchase Louisiana? You're being a hypocrite. Why are you doing that? You always said you can't. You'd be able to use the same strategies, answer the same questions the same way we did it over here. You got this. Of course you got this. You know why? Because you watched this clip and you watched this whole series. Have an awesome day, night, or whatever time it is that you're watching this.